Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there is to find. Today, we are joined by Swiggity Swoo.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's glad to be back. We took a little 2-week break, but here we are.
John.
Standard nerd.
Kay.
Presenting the Emperor Venture, Ellen Venture, and Empress Vin Venture, heir to the survivor and hero of ages.
How long have you been waiting to say that?
A little while. It's very fun.
That's
And
fair.
yes, that is her real title.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I'm ReaderWarrior, and today we are going to be talking about Mistborn, the Hero of Ages, Part 2, Cloth and Glass, chapters 29 through 33. We're finishing off Part 2.
Did you forget what book we were reading?
It was just my brain went to the Well of Ascension, and then the final Empire, and I was like, "What's the other one called?" Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
I've been up for it.
I mean, that's fair.
Man.
It ain't like it's written in steel. I don't know. Okay, I had chapter 29, so probably just gonna get into it.
Go.
The Lord Ruler didn't only forbid certain technologies; he suppressed technological advancement completely. It seems odd now that during the entirety of his 1,000-year reign, little progress was made. Farming techniques, agricultural methods, even fashion remained remarkably stable during the Lord Ruler's reign. He constructed his perfect empire, then tried to make it stay that way. For the most part, he was successful. Pocket watches, another Clenny appropriation, were made in the 10th century of the empire, nearly identical to those made during the first. Everything stayed the same, until it all collapsed. That epigraph, yeah, me too. I like it. It feels like it goes good with like what both the citizen and yeoman want right now, because like they kind of want things to, like they want their empire to be this certain perfect way, and they're willing to like suppress certain things to make that happen.
Absolutely. It also kind of shows how the Lord Ruler was able to keep a grip on his empire for 1,000 years. Because, like, you would think that at some point people would have revolted, technology would have advanced. But the Lord Ruler kept everything so stagnant, so unevolutionary that nobody probably even thought to think of something new.
Yeah. Well, it's also because he was able to do that because he was around, so he could make sure to filter the information that people got.
Actually, it leads perfectly into this chapter too, because it starts off with an observation Sazed makes about Urto and how he's reflecting on back in the Lord Ruler's days, cities couldn't have large walls in case they needed to be, in case they started to rebel against the Final Empire. That way, the Lord Ruler's armies could easily take them. And it led Sazed down this path of thinking of, well, if there's a chance that, a rebellion could actually stop the Lord Ruler, that would be the only reason he wouldn't let them have walls. So it kind of like led him on to the rebellion.
Oh, wait, there was actually a quick little line where it said Sazed met Kelsier through Mare.
Yeah,
And
such thoughts led to Sazed to Mare, then to Kelsier.
that just blows my mind that Mare connected a lot of cliche Brandon dead mother or dead wife character and all, but Mare behind the scenes kind of established this whole book series.
And Mare was the only one that Sazed ever got to actually convert to one of his religions. So as he's going through this like crisis of faith, he's like thinking back to meeting her and his role in the rebellion.
It all does kind of spur from Mare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marsh joining the rebellion, Kelsier continuing that.
Mm-hmm.
Cosmere
And
burning
Saza
everything
joining
down.
Like you do. Go.
Basically, having caught up with Breeze and Goradel at Orto, Sazed plans to meet with Quellion, aka the Citizen. Quellion holds court in what was once a noble house, now whitewashed and stripped of all luxuries. He wears red, which reinforces that communist comparison we made before. He actually forces his
well, he's got
guards to as well.
He's got a hammer and scythe across his chest.
It's a sickle.
Sickle.
I know what you meant. So, during the meeting, he immediately attacks Ellen's character, citing once again how the survivor would never want a noble on the throne, and that Ellen won his kingdom through conquest. They kind of go back and forth a little bit on, Sazed kind of explains the situation a little bit, but Quellion is unmoved. He then calls out Breeze for soothing him and the room, I love this turn of phrase, Allomancy, the black tool of the nobility.
Yeah,
He calls it magic too.
Does
I
he
think this
really?
is the first time. Yeah, Quellion refers to it as magic at one point, and it's like the first time we've actually had somebody say the word magic.
Yes.
Also, like a black tool of the nobility that you also use as well.
You also employ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hypocrite. The hypocrite of ages.
Shots fired. Coins fired.
Speaking of that, Breeze has the best comeback where he's just like, oh, well done, you found me out. Now you have to wonder, why did I manipulate you into saying all that? Which is
Breeze
obviously
couldn't just be found out. He's Breeze.
Yeah. Obviously, you can't mind control people with soothing, so he's just being sarcastic. Sazed comments that the mists are killing people and soon the people of Orto will starve, and Quellion takes that as a threat and refuses to cooperate with the crew, saying they aren't worried about their future because they follow the survivor. Sazed asks to stay in the city, and they dismiss themselves from the meeting. As they are leaving, they see people burning tapestries. A soldier informs them that the citizen keeps tapestries in reserve to burn at dramatically appropriate times. I said born, but I meant burn. The soldier turns out to be Spook. Yay.
I got my two notes right here. So I love the idea of an IKEA that's just, hey, we need to burn down a place. Let's bring out some of the furniture.
Nobleman's IKEA.
Yeah. And second of all, Spook is introduced to the crew right now in the same way he was back in the Well of Ascension. He was disguised as a guard, and he's sort of just appeared. And granted, back in book 2, he just placed some coins down and said, hey, my money's on Vin. But back then, he was dressed as a guard. Here, he still does the same, but right now, he's not immediately breaking character, but he's also not pretending to be that. He's being his own person whilst also putting on this show.
Yeah, Spook definitely changed from Well of Ascension. So they kind of have a nice little reunion, and Spook takes them to the Canton of Inquisition. And I love they're kind of breaking boards to get into it, and says it is damn, dude, that must have been a loose one. How's he getting? He's out so easily. And then he's struggling one, and Spook's just yeah, let me get that for you. He's just whips it off with one hand.
And he's like, oh, Spook must be up practicing lifting weights.
It's working out.
Makes more sense than the other thing.
True.
So they go into the Canton of Inquisition. And what do they find? The missing cachet. Apparently, this is also where the slots of Orto have redirected the canals to. So there's like a flow of water in this tunnel of supplies. And they're going to move the army into the cache and kind of make that their base of operations. That's where we lose the chapter.
Yay! I promise I'm not dying. There was a line where Vin came in one day to open up this cache, and I just find it hilarious that Vin just, showed up, opened the thing, and left. Just like, see you, spook, bye. It was gone.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I think it was actually that they found out that that was the next cache. Vin went to go investigate, and then they sent Spook afterwards to spy more on the citizen because they knew they were going to have to do something to try to get to it.
So Vin went in, saw what was in it, got the next location, and based upon the fact that they just didn't really need the water at that moment, left.
Well, no, based on the fact that it was more important for them to find the location of the next cache than it was to secure those supplies at that point in time. They left and they sent Spook in to Urto to spy and gather information because they knew they were going to have to come back to try to actually get the supplies from the cache, to actually secure it.
I thought Spook was already there, and then Vin just showed up when he opened it and then left.
No.
See you, chump. I don't know. I actually didn't think she even opened it. It sounded to me like she just scouted out Orto. But she would have to, right? Because you need to be Mistborn to open it.
Well, yeah, and she needed to have opened it to have seen where the next cache was.
Something tells me we didn't want Ellen being the one to fly into this city.
Yeah, even
there were two other.
Even Quellion mentions hey, if Ellen had sent a noble and not a terrorist, we'd probably just kill him on the spot and send his skull back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quellion's not doing so well on the likability chart right now.
He's got a 0 out of 10.
Yeah.
Orto sounds hellish.
Yeah. I really kind of hope in the movie that because they go into the building, the canton of the mini building, right? And then they have to go down to the basement, and then they go find. Yeah. I really wish it would be the same set piece as in the movie as when we first see Kelsier and Vin when they do it in Luthadel. And you even have the plate of the cupcakes in the corner as well. Everything's got a nice dust.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. That would be so good. Just that same
look how
layout,
far it's come. Look.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't the buildings all be the same, for one thing? But also, kind of show where we used to be, where this started, and where it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it. Look at the first time we enter the Canton of Inquisition in Book 1 versus now.
Well,
I just
totally
would like to
different
note
vibe.
It's also a completely different building because the one in Book 1 is in Luthadel.
Also, the one in Book 1 is
but
the Canton of Finance, not the Canton of Inquisition.
Correct. Well, no, don't they go into the Canton of Inquisition towards the end?
No.
Okay, but it can't
It's
be
symbolic.
the same
It's
format.
not literal.
It's symbolic. Rule of cool.
That rule does not apply to the real world, sir. Nor to this book, apparently.
This is the real world.
Architecture. I don't know. Their version of brutalist.
There was no even call you now, and there was also a line where Saza's what do we even call you now? And he says, "Call me Spook. It's a good name."
Okay. Do we want to move on to the next chapter?
Sure.
Okay. So,
Okay, you've got 30.
yes, I have 30. So, in this epigraph, we kind of learn a little bit more about Rashek and why he specifically targeted the terrorist religion to destroy. It's because he knew that one day the well was going to, or he suspected that one day the well was going to fill back up, and he didn't want the prophecies of the Well of Ascension to be out in the world for someone to pick up and learn about. And possibly
You
be
can
able
make
to take
excuses
the
for
Well
it.
of Ascension, the power, and overthrow him.
Excuses.
Okay, so in this chapter, so Ellen and Vin are going to a ball. Very exciting. So we start off.
Wow, Kay taking a ball chapter? We haven't seen this in a while.
I know it's
Because there hasn't been a ball chapter in a while.
Yep.
Speaking of callbacks to the Final Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but this is the first ball that they get to attend together. Very exciting. So they, Ellen is talking to Ham while they're waiting for Vin to get ready. And they're kind of talking about, like, Ellen is like, this is a dumb idea, right? Like, I shouldn't be doing this, right? And Ham is like, nah, you're good. Like, you're fine. Like, this makes sense. This makes perfect sense for what's going on. It's no different than in Well of Ascension when you walked into your father's camp. Like, and at least now you have powers and you're stronger. Yeah. And Set and Ham have a good little debate about whether or not a king needs to please people. And Set is obviously in the camp of a king shouldn't need to please anyone. Like, you don't need to do anything because you're king, and everyone needs to listen to you because you're king. Ham is like, but you probably should have someone. Like, you have to get someone to listen. Like, you have to please someone, at least. Like, even your army. And Ellen is kind of thinking, as he's listening to this, he's like, wow, I haven't heard Ham make his silly philosophical questions in a while. I miss those. He's like, it's sad that he stopped doing those. And he's like, probably because Breeze isn't around anymore, which is kind of
Probably
sad.
a little true.
Yeah. And
it only works if someone's there to be annoyed.
yeah. And they kind of set up who's gonna take command if both Ellen and Vin die in this little excursion, because Set just wants control of the armies. He just wants to be in charge. So he's like, I'm gonna be in charge, right? And Ellen is like, no. He's like, but, and he's like, no. And like, but what if this happens? And he's like, fine, Set. If I die and Vin dies, you are in control of this army, and you should hightail it out of here because the Mistborn who killed us is coming after you next.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
But I'm in charge until then, right?
Yeah. It's very much the, like, young, like, kid who is like, I'm in charge, right? And they're like, and the parent is like, no, you're not in charge. And they're like, but what if this happens? But what if that happens? Like, it's like, yes, okay, if a satellite falls out of the sky and you need to run out of the house,
I was thinking, you're thinking of Phineas and Ferb right now.
I am.
I had that in my notes.
I was thinking of Dresden Files. but okay.
Like, Mom says I'm in charge. I'm just thinking directly of Phineas and Ferb.
That's essentially set right now.
You little whippersnappers.
So Vin comes out, and Ellen thought that she was just putting on a serving woman, like one of the cooking girls' out dresses that had been tailored. And she comes out in a stunning black ball gown, and his jaw just drops to the floor and can't say anything. Like, just the funniest.
That's how you know he loves her.
You might say his gob was thoroughly smacked.
Yep.
He's like, if that's a serving girl's dress, we're paying them way too much.
Yeah. So, Vin and Ellen head off to the ball at Keep Oriel, I think. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah, Oriel. So they head off to the ball to Keep Oriel, and they're, flying through the air, as one does when they're Mistborn. And they get there, and instead of deciding to land in the shadows to be like subtle, they decide, we're just gonna go full out. So they land right on the front steps. And this fantastic scene. I just love this scene because they come up, they shove one of the servants aside, trying to get them to stop, and they just walk in, and I can just imagine like all of the noble women, like people like falling out of the way as they just like rush, like essentially bum rush the doors, but as like not as like
Not today.
Not today, like not gonna deal with any of this today. We're just walking in. Oh. And they hand the card to the person, and he announces them, and everyone in the room goes dead silent. And they're just like, But they get in, and they get mixed around in the party, and they decide that they are going to split up for this party. Ellen wants to talk to Yeoman, but he wants to give Yeoman a second to like get himself together and to realize, yes, these two people did in fact just crash my party. So and they decide to split up to cover more ground. So Vin at first is like, she's a little bit like, I don't know what to do. Last time she was playing Valette Renew, where she was the lowest man on the. Now she's the highest on the totem pole. She is most powerful in that room. So
she's queen.
So she decides that what she's gonna do is she's going to look for the Jan Alariel of this court. The woman, the head woman in charge, who has her gaggle of women around, because like I don't like that person because I didn't like Shan, so I don't like her either. So I'm not gonna like her either. So I want to be on the opposite side of whatever faction she's on. I don't want to be on her side. So she goes and confronts the woman, who turns out is a cousin of the Alariels.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
It's almost like this is symbolic of something.
Yeah, almost. So she absolutely tears her to shreds. Verbally tears her to shreds, and ends up where all of the women that were surrounding this one head woman leave her, walk away, and they join Vin, and they ask Vin if they can show her around. And Vin is like taken aback by this. She's like, "What? Like you?
That worked?
That worked?" But she agrees, and she lets them show her around. That is where the chapter ends.
There are so many references to the Final Empire in this chapter. I don't even know where
There
to begin.
I wasn't even gonna mention most of them because just a lot.
But just you wait, because it's going to get even thicker in 2 or 3 chapters.
Like, you have the whole conversation about with Ham and Vin, and like, you thought I was a Twixt at first. He's like, yeah, I wasn't expecting another Mistborn.
That was so good.
And then you've got Vin literally saying an exact line that Kelsier said, "We Mistborn are incredibly mysterious." Kelsier said that.
Yes, but then she went on to say, "We Mistborn need not make sense. It's beneath us," which was also an excellent
I'm pretty sure Kelsier said that too.
Maybe, I don't remember for sure, but like, it's still an awesome line.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also have sorry.
I didn't when Ellen says like, "Oh, you're not gonna try to talk me out of this." Isn't that from the Final Empire too? I think Kelsier says that before he goes to one of the keeps.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
he asks that to Doc before he goes to one of the keeps.
Wow.
I wish that Vin's dress was the same color as the one she wore when she first met Ellen.
Oh, also,
red.
Speaking of that, I really like their outfits. Because Ellen is in white, figure of white, and Vin is in black. And with the the noble men and women, the men are the ones who wear black and the dark colors. So the fact that Ellen is wearing white immediately sets him apart because of that. And Vin, with the noble women, mostly wear bright colors. And she's in there in that stark, dark black dress that also immediately sets her apart, and it shows that they're different.
They stand out completely.
Visually stand out from the crowd.
So I would
That's
go
really
back
cool.
to the Final Empire and I would change it so she wore the black dress first when she met Ellen. I think because I like the symbolism of where they started and here they now, especially in Kay's next chapter. But like that would be such a nice imagery if you can cut when they first meet and then like turn and now they're where they are now.
You can still do that even if they're not wearing
Yeah,
the
but it's
same.
not this. It would look much better. Work with me here, Kay.
No.
I mean, Ellen should have just brought a book.
Yeah,
Should have just started reading in the corner. Yeah.
Just wait.
I would have.
I think that part of this chapter too is like not just comparing it, but also contrasting it. Like, how much have they changed? You know.
Yeah, very much. They've both changed very much, and this is mostly about how much Vin changed since Final Empire. We'll get to how much Ellen has changed in the next ball chapter.
But even like on the topic of the clothes, like Ellen used to wear like the baggy, like, you know, ill-fitting suits, and he never tucked him in or whatever. And now he's like in this exquisite white uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly tailored for a Mistborn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His hair's all like done.
Like, there's also like Ellen, pulling out a business card. I love that he has business card. He's handing them to the speaker.
Yeah.
How much of our tax dollars went into those business cards, Emperor Ellen? Don't worry about it. Just wait until we find the ATM. It'll all be worth it. But
Yeah,
also,
large stash of ATM coming in. Don't you worry.
Don't worry about it. Then now being the Sean character, she's now top dog at this thing. Everybody's flocking to her. Oh, it's so good. My only complaint is the fact that you've got Vince saying, hey, that was 5 years ago. Ellen said it was 2 chapters ago. The timeline does not make sense at all.
No, it was It was 5 years ago when they first met at the ball, because the first book, I think, was over maybe.
They say 5 years
The
ago a
first
few
book-
times.
Yeah,
The first,
They
it's
say,
like over
like-
the span of a year. The first book, I thought.
yeah.
The first
was-
book was like over the span of like, I want to say like 6 months or 8 months, and
No,
then
it
you
was
had a
like a
year-long
year.
gap.
The first book, it was like a year.
We know
Yeah,
Vin
it's
had
like
a
a long
birthday
time.
at some point. I don't know. But I just feel like a whole season changing is a bit much. Then you have a year-long gap, and we've gone into great detail of the siege of Luthadel probably took any point in time. I think it took maybe a month or two.
I think
I don't
that's what
think
we've
it was that.
decided, is that it took a couple, like a month or
Yeah,
two.
in which a year-long break, that's 2, that's 3, and then you've got Vin saying, "Oh, we've met 5 years ago." It's just, this timeline doesn't make sense to me. It angers me greatly every time
Probably
I
closer
see
to
it.
4.5. 4.5, maybe.
That was it for my notes. I left the time thing for the very end because I knew it would aggravate me.
Vin is just a straight up bully in this chapter, huh?
She deserves
Yeah,
it, though.
kinda.
Yeah.
She earned it.
She
She
deserves
just
to
goes
be
up
able
there. She's like, "She's gonna betray you. I killed her cousin.
Does
You're
she
with
say
me
anything
now."
wrong? Does she say anything wrong?
No.
No, she's
Does
just a
the
bit aggressive.
ends justify the means. Maybe.
If it's against racism and nobility bigotry, then yes. Speaking of which, are we not gonna? We keep forgetting the fact that Vin is a ska. I don't think that's ever really brought up at any point. But Vin is a ska, and she's now the High Empress of the Final Empire, and she's the one all these people are like flocking to.
Not to get ahead, but she's half ska.
Okay, half ska.
And she did.
I don't think the nobility would have cared.
Probably not.
That's interesting. I feel like by the end, yeah, like during Will of Ascension, she's such high ranking that it's like her ska-ness is
Bless you,
almost
Kay.
like a non
Yes.
factor.
And
Also, she's only half ska. She's half noble. And now she's married a noble.
But she was brought up ska.
Yeah, but
you know,
these
Yeah.
people don't care. You've got ska blood, you're ska. These people wouldn't care. But she's now the person who stands out the most besides Elend. And everybody is flocking. All the women are flocking to her and asking her all about the... I don't want to go into the next chapter, the chapter 32's details.
yes,
I love the
we
idea
should
of like,
probably curtail this for the moment until we get there, because we're spoiling our own episode.
Okay.
well, I just love how Ellen was like, "Are ska, do they think like us?" And then like now flash forward to where his like wife and the emperor, was ska, was brought up ska. Like,
this chapter shows how much time has passed.
You know what I wonder? I wonder if ska was like a derogatory term in old Terrace or something.
Said that. I said that back in like the Final Empire. How like
Did you?
Rashek
Yeah,
probably.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I
That's
think it
probably
is.
where I got it from.
I think ska was a slang or slur for a Kelenium or Keleni, whatever you call
Keleni.
Alendi's people.
Keleni.
If you do the audiobook, it's Lenny. You gotta hook it.
Keleni.
Lenny.
Clenny.
Keleni.
My cousin's from Clenny.
I think ska might have been like a slur or something for somebody from Kelenium.
Or maybe just a hoity-toity person. And so, like, in classic Rashek way, he just went like, "Smite, you are now peasants." Not even peasants, you're serfs. You're almost slaves.
And then at that time, like started telling people, like, call them Ska.
Mm-hmm. John, are you excited for your chapter?
I was pretty indifferent to this section as a general rule. But we can go ahead and get through this so that we can continue our conversation about, the ball. So, chapter 31. Rashek wore both black and white. I think he wanted to show that he was a duality, preservation and ruin. This, of course, was a lie. After all, he had only touched one of the powers, and only in a very small way at that. So, Sazed is talking to the delegation to Urto, and they conclude that the river was in fact moved into the cache, where they had set up camp in case of attack. Sazed wonders about Spook's bandages again as they discuss the potential of why the cavern. What the hell did I write?
It's ruined.
As they discuss the potential of why the Lord Ruler would have created the cavern. Apparently, I missed a few words.
Well, obviously, it's because the Lord Ruler was a doomsday prepper.
Right, in the worst possible way. Like, literally changing the landscape just in case.
Not telling anyone. Yeah.
The river ecosystem is ruined in Urto.
Really, he was just trying to fix his own mistakes.
Right. Orianne asks about Quellion and what they're going to do about him. Spook wants to just give him the axe, and everyone else realizes they have to remove his power first before they can do that. And Sazed says he can't really blame Quellion for his beliefs because of what he's seen along the way. The group kind of gets sort of gobsmacked by that, and they're all just like, maybe you should explain yourself, which he does. And they kind of begin to get the idea of what he's saying. Breeze suggests that they need time to gather information and undermine Quellion, which just tells you exactly how much more of this book is actually left. And maybe see about starting a rebellion. Sazed wonders if they will ever get past Kelsier's legacy. Sazed thinks again about his religions and how he has fallen into a sort of melancholy, but he has to force himself to keep working. Sazed dismisses the survivorist religion again, even though he'd already dismissed it very early on. And he goes and reads the metal plate on the wall again. It talks about the simple plan for the caches to be a bastion for the people in the event of the Lord Ruler's death in the face of ruin, and Electrum as an allomantic metal, and a possible defense against people burning atium. Once he's done there, he goes to kind of reflect and contemplate his melancholy and his state of being over by the lake, but Spook decides that now's the time to go and talk to him about religion things, which is exactly what Sazed wants to talk about right now. In the process, Sazed kind of realizes, oh yes, he's wearing the bandage because of his tin burning. Spook tells him that he thinks the spirit of Kelsier is still with them, guiding them and defending them and protecting them and such. And asks if Sazed knows anything in his religions about them, and of course Sazed tells him that lots of religions talk about that. But he refuses to share a religion with Spook because why would he teach something to someone else when it doesn't provide any answers for him? Spook thinks it makes sense since it's Kelsier and not those other gods watching over them. Says it explains why he doesn't believe in preaching them anymore, but Spook says he thought it was because of Tindwyl, and that might have been what she wanted of Sazed. Now Sazed's a little bit gobsmacked like the others were before, and not just at the realization that that's what might be going on, but at the observational powers of Spook as well. Then he goes back to his religions for a little while, seeking truth in their wisdom.
You're telling me the guy with super sight can notice things? Wow.
Well, yeah, but not just like things that you can see, but things that you have to interpret. Which is, I guess, when you put it that way, kind of a natural extension of it, but yeah. He sees your feelings.
Strange how the survivors' crew, under the command of a noble emperor, must now take down a government based on Kelsier's beliefs.
Mhm.
My, how the
The
turns
irony.
have tabled.
If it makes you feel better, we might have to start a rebellion against the rebellion.
Yup.
Well played.
This is a cool scene. Just like, I really liked it so much. When Spook Spook is the only one who like cuts the crap and like actually talks to Sazed like a person. You know, like, oh, I just figured it was because you lost Tyndall. You know, but that was like weirdly powerful to me. And yeah,
Yeah.
Sazed's come a long way too, because like I was just reading in the Final Empire like this line where Vin is like, you mean, Vin said incredulously, you're going to get me to believe in religions that have been dead for 1,000 years? Sazed nodded. Is everyone involved with Kelsier insane? Just like,
Yeah.
like that line compared to right now.
To one degree
But
or
I
another,
like how
they are.
Sazed. Yeah. I like how Sazed will only preach religions that he believes in. And he said back in book 1 he believes in all of them. And I really like that, even if he doesn't believe them. So therefore, it would be blasphemous to preach them. And it would insult them even more in his mind.
I kind of think of this weird way of like Kelsier not necessarily like believing, but getting everyone else to believe, like, because he said he had hope and all that, but his plan was kind of to die. Like, I feel like there's something there of like, it's almost kind of like maybe a big theme in this book is just, you know, belief is a powerful thing, and even if you don't believe, you can still help other people. Because there's a through line between that and Elend being like a member of the Church of the Survivor and not necessarily believing in it.
Even if you don't have faith, you can still inspire it in others.
Yeah. And then that might come back to save you. You know, those other people and their faith can kind of lift you up when you're down.
Act as though ye have faith, and faith shall be given to you. Put another way, fake it till you make it. That was for you, reader. That was for you.
Thank you. I like it.
I knew you would. Guess what that's from?
I was gonna say, is that from West Wing?
It is.
Absolutely not. I found it weird that Rashek's message, he calls Ruin the Thing. Like, I feel like Rashek, out of everybody, would know its name.
No,
Like,
maybe he just
Vin,
doesn't want to acknowledge it. Like,
I don't know. I feel like if he's carving this into a steel wall, it would be easier to write in 4 characters than it is to do the 8 plus the space, the 3 space bar.
That is not written in English. Maybe it's like Cantonese or something, where each word is one character.
Okay, well, I still feel like something labeled Ruin might be easier than the Thing.
Maybe, we don't know.
He also
but that's
refers
implying that's implying that whoever's reading it would know what ruin is.
True, but he doesn't really say the thing imprisoned in the well. It's the same. He can say the thing, the deepness, ruin. It all means the same. I just feel like, why is he never acknowledging what it is?
I would guess that it is because he didn't want anyone to know about ruin. Because he wrote them originally, but then he had one of his obligators transcribe them into the metal plate and hang them in the caverns. So he probably didn't want to write Ruin's name there because he didn't want anyone to know. about ruin.
Who's this ruin guy?
Yeah.
I thought you were a god.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, it's not like he could have just like, you write this and then I kill you immediately to keep a secret.
That seems most likely to me.
You're not wrong, but I want you to be wrong.
Like, he went out of his way to, destroy his own people and religion. Like, I feel like if he wanted to keep a secret from being written, he could have somebody write and then just kill them afterwards.
Yeah, and he would be exactly that level of whatever that is.
But if he constantly, if he's killing his loyal servants, pretty soon he's not going to have loyal servants. People signing up to be his loyal servants.
And what if somebody found the caches before he died?
How loyal of a servant is he having this person scribe it to literally just, like, take what I write, carve it into metal? Like, that sounds like an intern's job, if you ask me.
Based on, there was something that I remember that was saying, like, my loyal servants, like, aren't allowed to, like, use this information. Like, if I find out that one of my loyal servants, like, used it, like, he'll be, like, dead or something.
Back in when they found the first cache, not the first cache, the one in the beginning of the book, there was a line like, by the way, if any of my obligators are reading this and you did this without my permission, I will kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, is like there's always a possibility somebody could find all this stuff and then they could put together, oh, there's an opposing force,
But he wrote the messages in case he died. I mean, I don't know. He's dead. Even in, I don't know. Okay, you have chapter 32.
I do indeed. So, the epigraph, we learn about that Allomancy is of preservation, which we already knew, and that it is net positive. They don't use that phrase in the epigraph. I think they use it earlier, maybe.
They use it in the Ars Arcanum.
Okay.
I'm going to interject a little aside, and I'm just going to say this because it's going to be an unpopular opinion and pedantic, but I feel it's worth mentioning that if something is worth is of preservation, it should preserve the balance of power, which it doesn't. If it's N positive, it's not preserving, it's creating, which is something else. Okay, I'm done now.
No, that's fair. I get that. That makes sense. But yeah, it is net positive, and the power is gained. It is created. It's used directly from preservation body itself.
Yes.
I have something I want to say about that, but it has to wait until we're in the spoiler realm.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. So, this chapter, we are still at the ball. So we start off with Elend, and his old friend Teldin, is there.
Remember that guy? I remember Teldin.
One of his friends from Final Empire, one of his drinking buddies, who he would go and drink and talk philosophy with, is at the ball.
With that other guy, what was his name?
Jastes. Jastes Lical.
Not important.
There was another one too. There were 4 of them, including Eldon.
Eldon?
Oh yeah, that other guy, Eldon.
It was Melland. There was a 5th man. It was Melland in the corner.
Was there really a 4th one? I don't remember.
There were 4 of them, yeah.
Yeah, there were 4 of them.
Yeah, I kind of remember there were 4. I don't think it's that big of a deal, though.
It's really
I was mainly just making a joke on Yastis.
So, Elend is talking to Teldin. He's very surprised to see Teldin. He didn't realize that Teldin was living in Vadrix, so he wasn't expecting to see him there. And they get into a conversation, and Teldin kind of confronts Elend about Elend's own thoughts and fears that he's been thinking about becoming the Lord Ruler. And he's able to articulate out to Teldon why he doesn't believe that he has become the Lord Ruler and why he is different than the Lord Ruler and that he's not going to become the Lord Ruler because that's one of Elend's fears is that he's going to become a tyrant because he doesn't want to do that. And so he's able to articulate that to Teldon and talk to him about how, like, being an emperor is what the people need. The people in the Central Dominance need right now. They need an emperor, someone who can make decisions.
Teldon is basically a stand-in for young Elend, basically here. And we saw all throughout this part, Elend was second-guessing and saying, isn't this what the Lord Ruler have done? Am I not just turning into him? And now he's faced with somebody who knew him at that age and knew what his views were, and most likely shared those exact ones.
Yeah.
He has to face that. And he's able to finally say, no, I am not the Lord Ruler. I am not going to be him. I do things because they are right, not because I want to do them.
Yeah. And Teldon is not really convinced, but Elend's not too stressed about it. He makes a joke where he's like, it's alright. It took me years to convince you that the Lord Ruler was a terrible emperor. I'm guessing it's gonna take me about the same to convince you I'm a good one. So
And I like that they're still friends.
Yes, they are still friends, and Teldon does chide him a little bit about not inviting him to his wedding. So
Yes, I love that part.
That was a great little, like, buddy moment that I think Elend really, really needed, because none of his friends are his friends for the sake of being friends. They're his friends because they're part of his political group. They're co-workers more than they are friends.
Yeah.
Will Teldon be this proud of him if he knew Vin was Scott? I mean,
and
he does know.
He does know.
He does?
Continue, Kay. It comes up very, very shortly.
I'll shut up.
Or, no, actually, it already came up because Elend says something along the lines of, you didn't like her very much when I first introduced you. And he's like, well, that's because we thought she was trying to kill you, or something like that.
Well, yeah, but they just thought she was a spy for one of the houses back then, right?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. So, he finishes his conversation with Teldon, and he kind of realizes that he forgot to tell him about Jastes, which is kind of a sad moment that he didn't tell him about what had happened to Jastes. And he's like wondering, like, does he know that Jastes is dead? Does he know that I killed him? Because I had to do that. So, at this point, Elend decides that it is a good time to go and confront Yeoman. So he.
This is a great interaction, by the way.
This is a great interaction, and I don't think I'm going to do it justice with summarizing it, but I'm going to try. So he. Just because there's so much in here it's just, you gotta read it.
Yeoman is a fantastic villain, though. Like,
and he's
the fact that
he's a fantastic adversary. I would say I wouldn't say he's a villain, but like,
because he just ends up arguing philosophy with Elend, and Elend is like, "Oh my gosh, yes!" I'm sorry, Kay. I'm so excited. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I was going to get there. So he finally confronts Yeoman, and they're both sitting on either sides of the table, the really long table with both sides spread out to either side of them, and they're sitting in the center across from each other. Oh, and everyone is watching. Everyone in the room has like turned to like watch this interaction.
See what you will do.
Yeah. So they have a debate about whether or not whether or not Elend is correct in coming to this city. Obviously, Yeoman is annoyed at Elend for coming to this city because he's brings up some good points where he's like, you marched your army on my doorstep and I don't want to talk. Then Elend, but you wouldn't have talked to me if I didn't have an army on your doorstep. Like, and Elend is being very sassy, and we're kind of seeing a little bit more of him from Final Empire with his interactions, where he's very flippant and very like, I can't think of the right word, but
sassy.
Sarcastic.
Yeah, sarcastic. So they have this conversation, and Yeoman says a line where he says, like, about the rule, only a man chosen by the Lord Ruler has that claim on authority, like why he should be the one in charge of the city. And Ellen is like, oh, I recognize that. That's from this philosophy text that I know. And so they start going back and forth about philosophy, and they start connecting about philosophy. And Yeoman gets thrown off for a little bit during this debate, and so does Ellen. They both kind of feel like they start,
A little bit of
yeah,
a kinship.
yeah, it's a kinship where they could
we
have
just
been
become
friends.
best friends?
Yeah, like,
You want to do karate in the
Do you want to do
garage?
philosophy in the garage?
yeah, in another life they would have been friends, and they would have been able to talk to each other and understand each other's points of view and debate and have good debates with each other.
That
But
whole time, he was person number 4.
but because this isn't the right time, this isn't the right place, like, it's not gonna work. And Yeoman essentially shuts it down and stops the philosophy debate. And they kind of end with where, well, before they end, is that Ellen does a gamble where he mentions that the reason that they're there isn't to take over the city. They don't really want to do that. They want to know what's in the storage cache. And Yeoman's eyes go like
Record
wide.
scratch.
Yeah. In surprise. He's genuinely surprised that Ellen knows about the storage caches. But obviously Yeoman pretends like he doesn't know what Ellen is talking about. And they end by essentially saying that Ellen is like, I'm not gonna attack yet. We're gonna leave it for a little bit. Gonna let your people start to get a little hungry on this siege before we attack.
Gonna let them starve a little. Just a little.
Yeah. Yep. And
Brutal.
yeah. Do you want to talk about the interaction before I go on to the next section?
I think you did pretty
Other
well.
than it being awesome. I mean, you've got a surly Mistborn, a sarcastic terraceman, and a group of disrespectful thieves birth the greatest emperor ever. Oh,
Yes, this chat was probably my favorite, like, of all these chapters that we read for this episode. Like, just this one little conversation was my favorite part.
mm-hmm. Well, my favorite part is upcoming. But you've also got a bead of atium on his forehead.
Yes, that is what he wears as his crown, his like symbol that he's king. Is he has a bead of atium hanging on his forehead.
Yeah, that's kind of an important detail that we sort of slid on by.
Yes.
So, when the Lord Ruler, we joked a bit earlier about the Lord Ruler writing the message, hey, if any of my obligators are reading this, I will find you. Look who opened the thing and found the message.
Yeah.
Well, I think Yeoman already knew it was there. I think he was one of the obligators that helped rotate the food in and out of the storage cache.
Yeah. I think the Lord Ruler would have killed anybody involved with that, though.
I don't think he would have.
I think just he was so paranoid about this. Why wouldn't he have made sure this would have his backup plan wouldn't have been kept secret?
But he wanted people to know about his. He wanted some people to be aware that there was a backup plan in place.
How did Heolin access it, though?
He obviously knew, because there was no guarantee that there'd be Mistborn strong enough to activate the thing, so there had to be a more mundane way of doing it. They being the crew, just kind of stumbled across a magic switch, I guess. Yeah, like a backdoor way of doing it.
So that whole time, Vil and Ellen have been tearing them down by the walls. You just push one brick and the whole thing slides open.
Maybe.
Something
like that.
Yeah, okay. I thought the whole point was that a Mistborn of great power had to be the only ones capable of getting in.
Oh, Inquisitors. Duh.
Of course.
That's the key.
So an Inquisitor has been here? That's not good.
Maybe. Or maybe he, as soon as the Lord Ruler was dead, he had Yeoman had an Inquisitor open it. And then the Inquisitors all went, I'm going to Paris. Vacation, baby.
Puts on sunglasses and the Hawaiian shirt. Bye!
Do you have to be Mistborn, or do you just need to be like a steel...
Probably
like
lurcher.
An iron puller.
I think you just need to be...
Iron.
Yeah, a lurcher.
Maybe they had a couple lurchers.
Yeah. Okay, so before Elend leaves, he asks someone to go fetch something for him as well, right after he leaves the conversation with Yeoman. And we switch to Vin. So she is talking to all of the women, and she's kind of a little bit thrown off by this. Like, this is weird. She's never had, like, this, like, been accepted so quickly into a society. Everything that she's had to do, she's had to work for to achieve. Which is why she's never really felt that the noble part of her was justified because she didn't have to work for it. But she kind of realizes to herself that, like, she does belong here. This is part of her. This is part of her heritage. This is who she is. This is part of who she is. And she has to accept that about herself. Which is, very nice, very sweet. It's something that last book Tidwell was trying to get her to confront, but she wasn't ready to do. And now she's in a place where she is ready. And
she is noble by blood and by oath.
Yeah.
This is where she belongs.
Yeah. So Ellen comes and he steals her away. He makes a very cute comment about being a barbarian to monopolize her time. Monopolize her time. He grabs her away and he asks. He doesn't ask her to dance. He leads her to the dance floor and he's like, "We're gonna dance," and she's like, "What?" But but she's very excited about it because they never got a chance to dance in Luthadel. He asked her to dance once that very first night that they met, and she turned him down. And they never got another chance to do it. So...
they got plenty of time to do that.
So she was very excited, so they go onto the dance floor, and everyone else leaves. Everyone else exits the dance floor, so Vin and Ellen are the only people here. And Vin is like, "It's finally happening, I finally get to dance with him, this is it! last
Let's give
time.
him some room.
And they start, and the music starts, and Ellen pulls out a book.
Yes!
Start dancing.
You mother!
and Finn is like,
The most on-character thing I've ever seen.
and Vin like slaps him and is like, "What are you doing? Like, what on earth are you doing? What the hell are you doing? Put it away." But it's very sweet because the book is the book that he was reading that night on the balcony when they first met.
Oh.
So, you know.
Which immediately makes her do that little girl melty thing.
Yeah, and he does put the book away, and they continue, they dance. And Ellen talks about how his talk with Yeoman went, and he's kind of feeling not great about it, but it is what it is. So, yeah. And Vin kind of encourages him to accept the fact that who he was, like, that can still be a part of him, and it is still valid for him to have those outbursts like he did with Yeoman. Where he was very sarcastic and flippant. Like, that's okay to still be like that sometimes. And he's doesn't really believe it, but he'll get there eventually.
Well, it shows he's still human.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's still Ellen.
Yeah. So they both do their dance, and they are the most graceful Allomancers. Everyone is staring and watching them dance because they are both moving with the grace of Pewter, because they're both Allomancers, which you don't get to see very often. That is not something that you get to see a pair of people who are so graceful, like Ben and Ellen are during the dance.
I would,
and they're dressed
since I'm
so beautifully. I would love to see this in the movie.
Yeah.
Me too. And speaking of the movie, I would have it you play. There's got to be a theme, right? There's got to be a little bit of music that plays whenever Vin and Ellen are together. When they first meet each other, you get a few notes of it, and anytime they show up together, you get here. You just feel that full theme. It's fully out and explored, and as they dance to it.
Yeah.
You have spent way too much time thinking about the videoization of this.
Yeah, this is how I read it. I visualize it. I feel every little detail that comes in. I know how this should be made into a movie. Is Brandon going to hire me as a producer?
So they make their they decide to make their grand exit, and Ellen throws Vin essentially across the room and shoots across the room with Allomancy making an arc. And Ellen is like, "Thank you for having us. Bye. Anyone who wants to escape can come through our army. We won't stop you if you're trying to escape. Like, we don't want to hurt anyone. Like, not about that. If you want to leave, you can leave." And he also
which immediately makes it so, are they going to be kept in? Are they being forced to stay here?
and
he immediately puts him on the defensive.
Yeah. And he also jumps across the room, does not hit the ceiling, which Vin was proud of him for. And they escape into the night.
Escape.
Escape.
I would have Ellen spin around both of their his white his white cape, like whirling around, and then they pull the door shut, and then the end scene's just the doors close, cut the black. Yes, this is how I read. I see it. I hear it. Man,
I always feel like
I wanted this chapter.
I always feel like Vin is the Mistborn and Ellen just has powers.
Yeah.
That's kind of not far from the reality of it, I think.
Yeah, she's definitely like more natural in that role. So like those little kind of comments about like, Vin is proud of him for not hitting the ceiling. It's just like that's so perfect.
Yeah.
I would want in their dancing Vin to like maybe use steel pushing and arm pulling to give her greater like big leaps or higher twists.
Or they could just go so crazy with the push-pull thing that they could just lift themselves off the floor and dance in midair, like Kelsier did when he was fighting that in Quellion.
Exactly. That's what I think. And
that would be epic.
Are we saying Ellen has that much skill? That's what I do want. That's how I envision it, where they're pushing and pulling and they're moving in the air above everybody else. This is a beautiful chapter. I hate you for taking it, Kay.
Hate's a strong word.
You wanted me to take 2 chapters this time.
Yeah, but I thought you were going to take the TenSoon one like you've been doing for every other time.
Reader, I've been talking about this ball chapter for a year. Like,
yeah, but you were always talking about the entrance. I wanted Ellen pulling out the book and being like, I'm just going to read this book.
I don't know why you expected me to give up a chapter where they're being cutesy in their relationship. Like,
that's true.
Like,
I love this chapter.
There was no killing in this chapter, so I didn't want
it. No Kolos, so I don't care.
Well, I'm
going to
take...
though. This is such a like pivotal. This is such a Mistborn chapter. Like just like they're at a ball and there's political intrigue. This is like why I love this series so much. Is because it's not just crazy fantasy action.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can argue it's just filler. It's just showing us random stuff that like you have Vin accepting who she is even more, and that was her big struggle in book 2. And you have Ellen going with Teldon. Teldon?
Yeah, confronting his own fear about himself.
And then not only does he have to confront who he was, he also gets to enjoy who he was for a moment. Where he's like, wait a second, I know that philosophy. I always preferred this one. Not only does he get to argue against his younger self, he also gets to give them a moment to be alive again.
He even comes full circle on the romantic aspect of going to a ball. Like back in Final Empire, he always had a date, but he would never hang out with them. He would just go read and go talk politics with his boys. But now, he's there with Vin. He arrives together. And... yeah, true. But eventually they get that dance.
And if I was ever dating a woman and she just randomly, when we were dancing, pulled out a book and said, this was the book I was reading when we first met, I would marry her on the spot. That is the most adorable thing I have ever seen in a book.
Well, good news. Her and Ellen are already married.
And it was very much so on the spot.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, since Kay took my favorite chapter of the book, I'm going to take the TenSoon chapter. Chapter 33. Hemalurgy is of ruin, as contrasted to Allomancy being of preservation. It destroys by taking abilities from one person and giving them to another in reduced amounts. Power is actually lost, in line with ruin's own appointed purpose, breaking down the universe into smaller and smaller pieces. Hemalurgy gives great gifts, but at what cost? Dun, dun, dun. The Kandra were silent, albeit scornful, as TenSoon is walked into the trust warren. By keeping him caged and publicized, the second generation has turned every Kandra's pity into disgust. But TenSoon was proud. He tricked the seconds into giving him the dog's body that Vin had bestowed upon him. She believed in these bones, and he would believe in her. Kanpar steps forward and asks if he is ready for punishment. Tensoon says that this was not a trial, but a publication. He yells at the Hidden first, telling them that they must act. The end has come, and soon they will need to accept the resolution. Everybody waits for a response, and shockingly, they got one. Quote, a voice, soft, scratchy, and very tired, spoke from above. Proceed, Kanpar. As the Kandra gasp in shock, Tensoon shakes his head. He had failed in his mission. Kanpar declares his punishment, the act of Shungar, where he will be broken and put into a hole for 10 generations. The guards lift their hammers and prepare to strike as Tensoon reveals why he wanted the wolfhound's body. They were much faster than humans. With the skill he had gained from chasing after Vin, Tensoon charges at Kanpar and tackles him, shattering his crystal bones easily. Even without the blessing of potency, Tensoon was able to jump back towards the exit. Quote, farewell my home, Tensoon thought, leaving the main cavern behind, and farewell to what little honor I had left. And so ends part 2.
Dang.
Yes,
Little Sunny pup.
You tricked them.
Just a good scene. Now I feel like there's not much to talk about it with it, but like that is great.
Yeah.
His plan worked.
I like his comment about how 100 pounds of wolfhound is a lot stronger than 100 pounds of human.
Because like
we never
humans aren't made to be. Sorry.
We never see Sean Gar again.
No, I didn't even know that the word was even in the book. When I read it, I was like, "Ooh, I'm definitely adding that to my notes."
Right. There's like it's very rare that in like these books where you'll have like a throwaway, not let's say it's throwaway, but like a term that's only brought up one time.
Yeah.
Just wait until like 8 books down the line where Shangar's been going on behind the scenes this entire time, and who knows, whatever.
If Sean Gar makes a comeback, I will cut my hair.
I will eat my Sunni pup.
Don't eat your Sunni pup. You don't even have a Sunni pup.
Public service announcement.
I have a doom slug.
Well, there you go. You can eat your doom slug without salt.
Yeah. I mean, we've got the first who actually say 2 words. Which that was cool, considering what we've heard very little of them. Do you think the time they were silent and just everybody was waiting, they were like, who wants to say it? Do you? I didn't get to say it last time. Do you want to say it? I'll say it. Let's all flip a coin.
But I think, are they like, aren't they insane at this point? Like, they've been around for so long, they have to be.
No, but they are old and they're tired.
And soon knew them. He said he wrote the first contract with them.
Oh wow.
Yep.
So there were, that means that the third generation was around within that kind of 100-year span before like the contract was made.
So the original contract with the Lord Ruler was made by the first generation right after they were created. Then, like 300-400 years later was when the Mistborn were consistently killing Kandra. And so then the Kandra created their contract based off of the first contract that they had with the Lord Ruler. They used that as a basis to create the contract with the humans, which would be the laws that all of the Kandra would follow.
Okay.
And interacting
so,
with human
and that's
society.
The one.
That's the one that Tensoon
That's the
helped
one that
create.
Tensoon. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that means Tensoon's really old too.
Yeah, he should be
he's-
roughly 700 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I was not picturing that.
Nope.
Yeah, he doesn't act
he-
a day
And
over
Vin,
600.
and Vin made him a dog.
I was just gonna say, I would have been every animal at that point.
He's pretty agile for his old age.
Right? Like, oh, let's try being a mouse today.
Well, I guess law of conservation of mass would matter.
Yeah.
Big mouse.
Very big mouse.
Rats of
you
unusual
do that?
size.
Do you think if you were a conjurer, you could like scale up bones if you were like talented? Like scale up?
I don't think so, because you can't change the size of the bones themselves.
Yeah, but you could take like extra bones
That's
and like work them
true.
in to kind of like make a similar shape, maybe.
Oh god. Is that what we I almost went into spoiler territory. Let's keep going.
Okay. John, I thank you for getting my joke. Anything we would like to cover for this part? This is the end of Cloth and Glass. No. John, as our residential, I don't necessarily like this book person, do you have anything to critique in this part?
No. It just wasn't super. It was necessary, but it wasn't super exciting to me. I mean, there's some cool little like moments where there's like some cool character play, but it just wasn't. It's the middle, right? Like it's the ramp up, it's the getting to the good part, you know, and we see that starting to happen. I have a feeling, because I've listened ahead just a little bit, that the next section is going to be where it starts to get tedious. A little bit.
I would say part one was reintroducing everything. Part one was reestablishing, here's what happened in previous books, and here's what we need to know. Part
Like
two was sort of, here's what's going to happen in this book. Here's what our focus is going to be on.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good way of putting it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame it took us 314 pages to figure out what the book's about.
It was a good 314 pages.
Yeah,
We got
this one is
Spook.
it moves kind of slow for me, to be honest.
I think it's slow because we have been doing it in parts. If you read all this as you were reading, like you jump around between so many different things that I'm sure it doesn't seem slow.
You know, there's
Spook,
likely some
whatever.
truth to that.
Yeah.
I
You got
suppose
Spook going
so.
crazy. You got Sazed and Breeze trying to work on their emotional issues. You got Vin and Ellen confronting their personal issues.
It's also just kind of like split. Like it doesn't have like the focus of the other two because we're spending time in like these two different cities with like different pockets of characters.
Everything is split up.
That is kind of a valid point. It's almost like Phantom Menace that way, like where there's 4 stories going on.
And none of them, again, like I said this a million times, but like, and none of them are as enticing as like, we've got to take down the Lord Ruler.
Yeah, let's kill God. Well, right now
we gotta
we've
mop
got
up the remnants.
Yeah. Right now we've got to stop an actual gods. So.
Well, we don't know what that actual god's. We're just kind of scrambling.
True. Yeah.
Wow, I think we've just summed up exactly why this is not one of my favorite books. Interesting.
No, I think the little details make it great. But we'll go through that as we go. Anything else before we head on into the spoiler realm?
I think that's good.
Watch me struggle to read all this and just without coughing. Next time, we will be covering Mistborn, the Hero of Ages, for 3 chapters 34 to 37. I don't think anybody has any dibs yet. But it is time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, then we recommend that you stop here, because it is likely that we will talk about everything and anything. If you are up to date, feel free to stick around, because it is likely that we will bring up details you may have missed or plot threads that are still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, or whatever it is on this podcast. And don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. We would love to hear from you. But if this is where we must part, then my name is ReaderWarrior, and I have been joined by Swiggity Swoo.
There's always another podcast.
Oh, no, don't say that.
No, this is the podcast. This is the
the
podcast.
only podcast. You must listen to our podcast.
There's always another episode of this podcast.
There you go. That works.
John?
Yep, that's me.
And Kay.
Have a good one.
And don't forget, there's always another connection. And we're back into the spoiler realm. Kay had to leave us because she's not feeling well. I might have infected her with my cough.
Yeah, definitely infected her through Discord.
Mm-hmm. My powers.
I thought it was the mist
unmatched.
sickness.
Oh, that's true. But chapter 29. Oh. I am not dying yet. We've got the comment on Rashek keeping technology stagnant.
Keeping us from experiencing Mistborn versus gunpowder, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
For now.
Sadly, yes. Did Quellion actually feel Breeze just like is able to recognize in elements a soother's touch, or did Breeze do it on purpose?
Sorry, I was muted there. Probably neither. It was probably Ruin squeaking in his ear.
Ah, because he is spiked.
Right. But I can't remember what his spike is, so it's also possible that he was seeking at the time.
Let me do a quick check. I don't think he was actually... I know he's spiked, but I don't think he actually has any powers.
That is also possible.
Let me do a quick...
Because Breeze is supposed to be pretty good at his job.
Yeah.
It'd be probably hard to detect if he was soothing you.
Yeah, I'm reasonably sure it was Ruin whispering in Quellion's ear.
That's a good theory. I'll take it.
Quellion wouldn't recognize Breeze.
He has a bronze hemalurgic spike. Let me check what bronze does.
Pretty sure that's
That's
Smoker?
Iron 10, Peter steals. Bronze steals mental allomantic powers. So he could be seeking.
He just stores mental allomantic powers?
Steals mental allomantic powers.
I've got a lot to learn about hemalurgy.
Everybody does.
Because that almost makes it sound like you can take, like... So it's... Basically, if somebody has... Like, let's say you have a misting with the ability to soothe, you would need a bronze spike. but also if you had like a rider, you would need a bronze spike. So there's like different categories for the different spikes you would need.
Yes.
Different
And
spikes depending upon the different art as well as the different physical, mental, temporal, the different of the yeah.
It also has to go into a different place.
Different bind point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just knowing that he has a bronze spike doesn't exactly tell us what his powers are.
Correct.
No.
It also doesn't necessarily mean he has a power, because you can spike someone without, like, that's like a normal person, and it steals just a bit of their soul, or, you know, whatever, their connection to their world, whatever. So you can make a spike out of a normal person and pound it into someone with, like, their connection, or who has access to connection, and you could, you know, that person would then become connected to the person's world, or whatever, depending on how it was used, potentially. I
I think
remember
it would
reading,
have to be bronze.
it probably. I remember reading something about you could just steal bits of people's souls with hemalurgy, and have to be able to make that connection to ruin, which is, maybe that's how Wax's earring was made. You know, it didn't necessarily have to kill an Allomancer, because it doesn't give him extra powers when he wears it. It just lets Sazed talk to him.
Well, it was made from Allomancers back from the first 100 days of the Spook's reign. It's just they had really old people sacrifice themselves, sort of like donors.
And what do we know what metal that's made out of?
Probably something just like steel or something. I don't think it's
Somebody somewhere knows. I feel like they do mention it. I think it was brass, but I'm not certain.
It just allowed him to talk. It allows
If Dragon was here, he would know.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up on the copper mine. Wax's earring is a hemalurgically charged Pathian earring, created from the melted down spikes of a steel inquisitor. It was given to him by Kandra Milan, small and simple with a head stamp. 10 interlocking rings, the symbol of the path. I don't think it says.
Also, it makes sense that Quellion would have bronze if he's seeking out Allomancers that are in his. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm pretty sure it's bronze.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. You got Spook, who's kind of going a little bit crazy right now, listening to Helsier and being very violent.
Helsier.
Yeah. Anything else for 29?
Not too much. It's just kind of like, you know, setting the scene in this chapter. So
whenever Kay's not here, I start second guessing myself. I'm like, do I even know for sure? Did I forget something? Yeah. Chapter 30. Yeah. You've got, Rashek destroying his own race, religion, people, just to keep his secret. Which was totally just to prevent somebody from finding it and becoming a hero. Totally wasn't the fact that he just wanted all the power to himself. Dragon!
Hey, hey.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Thank you, good sir.
We are currently on chapter 30, and we are in the spoiler realm, so you are free to say whatever you want.
Okie dokie. Give me just a second to orient myself to the right chapter, and then you guys can keep going, and I'll pop in
Okay.
All right.
as needed.
We've got Ellen and Ham and everybody, and they're talking about what things were like back in the good old days of book one and how much they've changed. And I really like how, and I can't believe I forgot to bring this up, but Ellen has grown so much that he now knows how he can mess up, but other people are now telling him how he can succeed, compared to book two, where it's like, oh, if we just do this, it'll be fine. And everybody was like, no, we can't really do that because there's this issue and this issue. Ellen and Vin leave for the ball, and Ham tortures Set for the rest of the night.
I do like that it's like a little bit of like it's like showing like the growth of Ellen, but it's also kind of like letting you see that Ham's not like his whole desire to torture someone with philosophical like puzzles isn't completely lost either.
Yes. Bit bait.
It's really a chapter of everybody kind of reestablishing their own personality in a way.
Right, like, I mean, because you also have like Vin's making like this, like, she's like teasing kind of a thing, you know, she's like, oh yeah, like, you know, the maid made my dress or whatever, you know, and stuff like that, and it's just like, anyway, so I do think that it's like very interesting, like, what they're able to kind of establish and do it, and it kind of gives you that a little bit of that old like feel from book one, which was like I think one of all of our favorites, when you have them like all sitting around the table, you know, being themselves and like, you know, ribbing each other and, you know, having that like real close knit feel that I feel like everyone has some sort of craving for and really enjoys those pieces, and it is a little bit of a throwback to that for everyone.
Yeah.
Ellen and Vin head to the ball. Some poor guard hearing Vin's dress gets go as she pushes up, just like, what the heck is that? Then you've got probably one of the coolest lines that Kay used as her introduction: High Emperor Lord Ellen Venture and the Empress Vin Venture, hair of the survivor, hero of ages. Oh, I love it so much. And anything else for chapter 30? They go to the ball.
I mean, this I think is, as a spoiler section, this is a great point to bring up as like, this is when she senses ruin behind her, right? While they're first going in. That's this chapter, if I remember correctly?
I don't think so.
Is that the next time that they go in? Sometimes even reading it recently, sometimes I mix up chapters.
I think that was earlier on, actually, when she was first scouting out Urto.
I know, but there's another one where she's like with Ellen, and they like land, and he's like, can you tell that there's a Mistborn watching us? And he's like, oh yeah, that little dark shape over there. And he's like, yeah, like we're just kind of both studying each other. She's like talking Ellen through being spotted by the Mistborn, and really that's
maybe that's
ruin.
Later. I think that's actually the next time.
That's the next time. Okay. I always mix those.
I don't remember that.
I always forget which one that's in. So I just know it's one of the times that she's entering with Ellen.
Totally an understandable thing to mix up.
So cool.
Fair enough.
Chapter 31. We've got Rashek touched the power of preservation, and only a small bit of it.
Yeah.
Yes, the power to do all of that was a small bit of it.
Well, yeah, it was like just mere moments worth of the power.
Yeah, and compared to infinity, everything is going to be a small bit.
Well, I mean, any finite amount would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, it was just there. Small piece.
Power, infinity.
Oh, right. So it seems to me like when it comes to investiture, once you hit a certain point, it's no longer magnitude of the power that increases, but the duration of it. You know, once you hit that point where you are touching the body of a shard, it's no longer how much power you have access to, but for how long you have access to it. It seems that way.
Yes, I think it would have to do with the spiritual realm and how they have access to an infinite supply of it. Like, it's not so much that now I have like, if this car has like an attachment to it that gives it enough gas so I can drive across the United States like 50 times and not even run low. Like, that would be near infinite. But if I now have a car that will never run out, that just goes.
Right.
That's got an infinite thing.
Duration.
Yeah. I'm just trying to establish the difference between near infinite and how a person can have near infinite investiture whilst a shard has the infinite access.
The human brain can't process infinity.
We could go ahead and talk about the different infinities and how not all infinities are the same and how some infinities are bigger than other infinities. If you really want to.
No, I'm good.
I didn't think so.
Okay. So we've got, it actually says like 3 days later, but we've got everybody back in the storage safe. Again, nothing really in here. There was a line that the keepers preserved the religions that I really liked.
Yeah, and particularly interesting about that is how Sazed is thinking about the keepers doing it and not his part in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, he doesn't really want to associate himself with that.
Yep.
There's something kind of poetic about Spook believing in Kelsier, even though we know it's ruined. Like, and then that kind of pays off for him when he becomes like the Lord Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
So like his faith is rewarded, even if it's technically a lie right now.
Well, it's not Kelsier that does that, though. It's Sazed.
But like, yeah, I guess that's true. Interesting.
But in both cases, it's either someone looking like Kelsier or Kelsier acting like someone acting upon Kelsier's request.
That's true.
So
Kelsier
it's like
did kind of prod him into it a little bit.
Right. So it's kind of like he's promised this, and it's not really fulfilled because it's not really Kelsier making the promise, but in the same way that not really Kelsier fulfills it, but it's kind of both slanted towards him anyway. So it's like both true and untrue at the same time.
Like everything else.
Pretty much. I wanted to kind of bring up in this one, just like the aspect, like the beginning, right? It says Rashek wore both black and white. I think he wanted to show that he was a duality, which was a lie. Of course, he only touched one of the powers, and and that's kind of like that, like small way. But I also want to bring up, like, I find it interesting. Like, he says, like, he wanted to represent a duality, but it was a lie because he only touched preservation. But Ruin touched him while he was in that brief, like, few seconds when he was stood well. So in a sense, he was actually influenced by both Ruin and preservation, both black and white, because his thoughts were affected by one, while his body and his mind was affected by the power of the other. which is why he was able to create hemalurgic creations, was because Ruin was whispering to him while he was at the well. So in a sense, he had both. Like, he was influenced by both, at least. Sorry, go ahead.
I never did think about the fact that Ruin touched him back. Like, that is a great concept, I would think.
Show me on the Lord Ruler where he touched you.
Yeah, it's hard to say that nowadays without jumping to that conclusion. Here's our little squishy Steel Inquisitor. Just show me where, the near omnipotent force of destruction touched you.
Give me a hemalurgic chart and I'll tell you.
Yeah.
He touched here.
So Ruin did influence him, like, while he was making the world, basically?
Yeah, well, so because Ruin is the only one that has the innate sense of knowing all hemalurgic spots, and Preservation has no knowledge of it at all. So he didn't get the knowledge of, and it said at one point later somewhere, like he never he was influenced by Ruin, and like it talks about, like, as Rashek goes mad, that's because Ruin is sitting there whispering in his ear the whole, like, for 1,000 years, right? And so at that moment, like, just as Bane was spoken to by Ruin, just like Kelsier could see Ruin in that inside the well, Ruin could have and would have, like, that's the only way he would have known how to do hemalurgy, is through Ruin whispering to him in that very moment, because that's when he created Kandra, Koloth, and Inquisitor.
That's how Rashek learned how to make them.
Yes.
Yep. And he started realizing, right, and that's like part of the reason why he's like, as like his first things was Inquisitor, right? And then as the power faded, and as Ruin's influence faded, he then made Koloth, which has less spikes. And then he started realizing, I think there's implied somewhere, I'm trying to remember what, I think it's in this book, like, it's like he started realizing that, I think the Kandra kind of talk about it is like, as his power was fading, like, he realized started realizing he was being influenced by the thing he was like trying to keep trapped, which is part of the reason why he like tried to make Kandra, quote unquote, of preservation, which I always think is a funny thing, because it's like, how are you of preservation when you have to live through hemalurgic spikes? You're technically only existing because of Ruin, but then you're agents of preservation. Anyway, kind of weird. But the point is, like, he created them with the least number of spikes, so they're the least influenced by Ruin and more likely to be overlooked. So then he can use them as a way to work against Ruin. So he kind of saw that as he was being affected, which means he was aware of it, which is probably why he wore black and white.
All that from a simple clothing choice.
Fashion means a lot, man.
Yep. Moving on to chapter 32. This is the Ether Ball chapter. Stole.
Then I imagine you have something to say about it.
It should have been mine.
Okay, something relevant to say about that.
Let's see. Allomancy's of preservation. Your comment how Allomancy, therefore being of preservation, should be neutral instead of it. Feruchemy is the more neutral one. I think that's because that is...
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. But you are not preserving something, like, it's the amount of power is not preserved in an N positive.
But it's not
function.
Necessarily the power, it's what you use it for. They preserve to protect. They can ruin to preserve. The reason that the
What are you saying?
I'm saying that the intent of what they're using the power for is why it gives a positive.
Yeah, like preservation gave them the power so that they could survive, so they could preserve themselves.
Mm-hmm. So that
they can. You mean?
Yeah.
So you're talking about, like, the intent of the giver was to preserve. Now, even though John's argument is the actual act itself is end positive and not preserving. Therefore, that seems confusing. You would think preservation would have an end neutral power because his whole shtick is keeping things balanced, right?
But that's not
keeping
necessarily
things the same.
Yes.
It's keeping things in the exact same state that they were before is what you want.
But that's based. I think that's based on one line where Ruin's like, if Laris had his way, he would just freeze the entire planet. But if you have a threat against something, and I hate to use the gun metaphor, I really do. But like, if you want to protect if somebody's under threat, and you want to make sure they are preserved, that they will make it, you got to give them a way to protect themselves. That way being this magic.
Okay, Liren would disagree with you. One.
Laris. Yes, probably. No, I would disagree.
No, he would absolutely. You can't kill to protect.
According to Liren, that is correct. That is Liren's theory.
Laris couldn't, but that's why he gave the humans more power, more of preservation, so that they could do that.
Well, so here's the thing: he had to give them more power to make them sentient. That was kind of like, that was the deal. Was I want them to be able to create. I want them I don't want things to just be like rocks and plants and stuff. To give them that extra level of sentience, he had to give up more of himself. But also part of his plan was to give them the basically the ability to choose, right? He gave them agency, right? If you want to go into religious side, he gave them the ability to choose, so that way they could choose between preservation and ruin, so that way they could eventually beat ruin. So he had to also give them the power.
Here it is, one of Vin's last lines. He didn't give up a part of himself, making himself weaker, simply so that he could create intelligent life. He knew he needed something of both preservation and of ruin, something that could both protect and destroy, something that could destroy to protect. He gave up his power at the well and into the mist, giving it to us so that we could take it. He always intended this to happen.
Right, but he had to use ruin to be the thing to be able to end to ruin or to end to protect. Because preservation can't do it. So he actually had to use ruin's power against himself.
Yes.
Right.
I'm saying
that kind of comes back to the why is preservation's power an end negative?
Preservation's power is an end positive, and it's the
positive.
fact that
I meant end positive. Sorry.
He's giving you a power to protect yourself. He's giving you a power so that you can do it.
I mean, that's one possibility. Another one is that the power doesn't you're not in end neutral or end negative. You're altering yourself from one moment to another, right? For Rukumi, you are taking power at one point, altering your being to be weaker, to then enhance your being to be stronger. Whereas Allomancy is the being itself is unchanged, but the power comes from an external source and thus leaves the being unchanged. The individual is not changed. The power goes up and down because the power is of preservation. But the investiture itself doesn't affect the individual. I don't know, that would be one potential thought. I can't say that's foolproof, but another approach.
I mean, I feel like maybe John is just right. Maybe it's
no.
Shouldn't be that way.
It's possible.
It's nitpicky and pedantic is really what it comes down to. You know? Because you could also make the argument that hemalurgy is preserving the power beyond its normal lifespan, right? Normally, that power would die with the person, but now when it's trapped in a spike, even though there's less of it, it can be preserved into the future and given to somebody else.
Yes, but it innately has to ruin in order to preserve. Again, that's the aspect that preservation cannot do that by himself. And that's kind of my problem with the whole, his power is end positive because he has to give it for you to be able to destroy to protect. because that's not what he gave. Like, he had to use ruin to access that part of destruction for protection. So his innate power was not there for destruction for protection. It was not even necessarily protection. It was to have no change.
That's why it's been positive. It's because it's mixing the two halves of a greater whole. You've got N neutral, which is preservation, that's ferochemy. You got N negative, that's hemalurgy of ruin. And then Allomancy is a mixture of both. What's wrong here is the line that Allomancy is of preservation.
But that is interesting because pure concentrated preservation is Lerasium and gives you total allomantic powers. So,
but pure Atium's power also gives you an allomantic ability. I feel like we could argue this all day long.
True. Someone wanna put that into our questions for Brandon? Why is an end positive linked to preservation, which should indicate no change, and basically a desire for stasis rather than a desire for positive or negative?
I'll let John type it out.
You brought it up. You got to type it in.
Fair.
Right.
Because I think the answer is solved.
That guy did it.
Yeah. I still gotta wonder how Yeoman was able to access the cavern. I do like the idea that it was an Inquisitor at the very beginning before all this happened, before it went off to kill all the terrorist people.
Feels like the simplest solution. It's very Occam's razor-y.
Yeah. And then you have the absolutely beautiful scene of Vin and Ellen dancing, and it's just absolutely metal. And I wish Vin would burn like gold at this exact moment so that we could see how much she has changed or what she could have been at this exact moment.
That would be cool. How different is this ball scene from the next one, though?
Oh, sorry. But that is about it for my notes. What about you guys?
I'm sorry, I didn't have much for this one.
Not very spoilery.
Not necessarily.
John, do you have anything, or are you focused on the question?
I was typing up the question. Which chapter was this again? The ball one, the second ball one?
Yes. Oh shoot, we almost forgot about mine.
Just a little bit of foreshadowing with Yeoman and his little pendant of power. It's not just for decoration and it's not just for show.
Nope. I gotta wonder if the minute like Ellen showed up, he was like, "Give me my second one."
Yeah, right. I'm just gonna swallow that with my tea.
Yeah. And then we have chapter 33, which is Tensoon escaping from the Kandra homeland. The first generation's just wanting to keep the peace, probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's the first time we hear them, and they finally talk about the I can't remember what it's called, but it's like their plan for when things go down.
Resolution.
It's finally mentioned here. Yes, the resolution.
Yep, the resolution. Yeah.
Which we know eventually they do.
Is, the mass suicide plan.
All right, everybody, swallow your cyanide capsule.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
But the Kandra are preservation.
Yes, they are.
Do we want to have this same debate about that?
I mean, we've already discussed that pretty.
Yeah,
You're-
I was gonna say we brought that up. I'm still confused by that theology, but you know,
It's the same way. It's like your heritage. Like, if a person has Nazis for parents, are they going to be a horrible person? You're not who you were born from. It's what you are.
I think more to the point is that the Lord Ruler touched preservation, and he made the Kandra, and so he taught the Kandra that they were of preservation, and so that's just what they believe.
I think it has to do with what we are doing is against ruin and it is for preservation. I don't think it's a literal thing.
I feel like both have significant weight. Like, if you're taught your whole life, like, it's like what you are doing is against ruin, so therefore you are trying to, in a sense, like help preserve us, right? By collecting all of the atium. You know, your purpose, what you're taught, and all the like. So like what the Lord Ruler taught is, hey, I had preservation and I made you, so you're gonna help me preserve things. But like then it's like also like just like their actions are of preservation. I can see both of those things kind of applying simultaneously.
I think part of the problem we're having is just like we're being a little bit too literal. Because from what I understand, these intents are a little bit more vague. Like, for example, even we have odium, which we don't have like a specific name for. And I think that helps out a lot in that series because you're not constantly thinking, well, oh, wouldn't this technically be a very passionate thing? Like, isn't this passion? Isn't that passion? You know, or whatever it is.
That's actually a really valid point. Like the names of the intents are human level understanding simplifications of it. That's a very good point.
And yet it's kind of unsatisfying.
It is, but that's because we're people. We want to classify and quantify and know, with exactitude, and we just don't. At least not
Especially because, like, as we get further into the Cosmere, we start like getting this idea of people being connected to different shards. So now we have this kind of working knowledge of like, if the intent matters quite a bit. And it even breaks down to like what you're trying to do with that magic system,
Yeah.
So you could probably use like preservation to do a lot of different things, but they kind of have to fall within like this umbrella.
I definitely feel like if we don't know much about Laris, we know more about AT than we know about Laris, but I feel like Laris was a shy person. If he was more confident, he would have taken preservation and turned it into more of protection.
Yeah, I could see that. I haven't finished this book, but even like the Sunlit Man, he's clearly got some kind of like he can't do harm to people, right? But he still like he still wins fights, So it's like you can be bound to this ideology and still kind of use it in a creative way, like maybe he like tricked the power of preservation to be like, well, technically this isn't really preserving things, but it's to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right, and that's kind of probably where he he knew he could kind of trick / like go like use other people's powers, right? Which is why he like needed Ruin to help beat Ruin, in that sense. He's like he's kind of roundabout like intention, but then also like if you can use someone else's intention to kind of play it off of you. So
yeah.
Yeah, I also like that and it's already things we've brought up, but like this is where it talks about like ruin is of like hemalurgy is of ruin and destroys, like it is like the whole purpose is like breaking it down into smaller pieces. But we anyway, that's just like I wanted to kind of bring it around for the listeners. It's like one of the pieces that I was quoting was literally just in the next chapter heading.
Makes sense.
All right, well, do we want to wrap it up soon?
Yep. I got nothing else. Anything else for you guys?
I think we've done a pretty good job here.
Yep.
Okay, then. That's just about to cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us in our ramblings and predictions. We cannot wait to cover what is next. Thank you again to Dragon for joining us in the spoiler realm. We are happy to have you as always. This has been Cosmere Connections, and we hope to see you next time.
Have you ever wondered why you never see Kay and Dragon in the same place at the same time?
Yes, we do. All the time.
If I had the power to write people, I could be like the best musician ever.
Mm-hmm.
Or not be, but people would think I am.
You could also take just pewter and become more agile.
It increases your dexterity, right?
Yeah.
Would that increase like how quickly his fingers could move?
Presumably. Or for that matter, you could take ferrochemical speed.
What if I had Atium, right? And like I watched somebody play and I just played like exactly the same notes as them at the same time as them, right? Because I'm burning Atium and I see exactly where they're going to go. And they're just like, how are you doing that?
In like a music battle?
Yes. How are you copying me note for note as I'm playing it? What is this?
That would be kind of
I'm
cool.
just more so impressed that you can copy note for note.
Well, it expands your mind a little bit to make sense of like
what it's
that
seeing.
information, right?
Yeah.
So I was banking on that.
You could also just have connection. Just take connection.
That was a bad decision.
That's what your mom said. Oh!
Eating some Takis.
Oh, eating Takis? Is that what you said? The children love Takis.
Takis are delicious, and I haven't had any in years. And I needed a snack to have.
Is that those
I saw them
little
yesterday.
roll-up Doritos?
Yeah, that are super spicy.
They're really popular in San Diego.
The children love them at my school.
Yes, well, children are crazy.
You would have kids that would come to school with giant, like, suitcase-sized bags, and that would be, like, $1 for a bag of Takis. And then if you add in, like, 50 cents, they would pour hot sauce in, close the bag, shake it, and give it to you. You had entrepreneurs in school, so you could add in an extra kick.
So you could make the already spicy food more spicy.
You know what's more delicious?
What?
Popcorners.
Popcorners.
Work, damn you.
I can't see it. Oh, I see it. Those look like, now that's a rip-off Dorito if I've ever seen.
You know what the best podcasting
it's made
snack
of
is, though?
Skittles.
M&M's.
M&M's.
M&M's. Yeah, I was like,
I got candy corn.
Thank
I couldn't
you, Kay.
remember if it was
Thank
Skittles
you.
or M&M's. I knew it was one of the two.
I think there was one time where Swiggity didn't have M&M's and did have Skittles instead, and was.
That's probably why I got confused.
It was the worst episode. It was. Everything was wrong.
That's why he was in such a bad mood.
Sorry, guys, I can't do it tonight. There were no M&M's at the gas station.
That was the reason he canceled 2 weeks ago. Couldn't get any M&M's.
That was the real reason. I didn't fall asleep.
You know what's better than like ridiculously hot fake Doritos? Spicy nacho cheese Doritos. They're only a little spicy.
Yo, you've got to come to the UK. All their food is different. Doritos are not Doritos.
The
Doritos
orange
are not
Dorito.
Doritos?
Yeah. No, the orange Doritos are not the nacho cheese. Like the red pack of Doritos is not the nacho cheese Doritos. It's really weird in Europe. I can't
In
remember what it
red,
is.
the reds are spicy, oranges are nacho cheese. And the original, if you ask somebody over here what what a Dorito bag naturally looks like, they'll say blue, because they had Cool Ranch over here before they had anything else.
But that's Cool Ranch Doritos. It says Cool Ranch right on the bag.
I know, but you ask us what we think. We think of the red nacho cheese one.
Right. The purple ones are not that good.
The sweet chili ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are gross. What's the English version of 911?
It's like 111.
911. Do we both just go for the same
one,
joke?
Yeah. Day one, I had hiccups.
7326385432439.
What?
Oh, it's an IT crowd joke.
Have not seen that.
Oh, it's English humor at its best.
I've heard that it's funny. I just haven't
It
watched
is. It's hilarious. So these guys from IT, what are they like? Standard nerds.